my passion is in applying the principles of behavior analysis to health and fitness.
Yeah.
And so, I came across that just in my master's program through my PhD, had a great opportunity to, look into the research, and my thing is reducing sitting in the workplace. And so just through an interested path of, okay, I'm interested in like OBM, which led to workplace applications, and I was making personal changes to health, and eventually that led to a blog, which we presented about at a conference, the first Next Gen one, and then, just kind of laying the path out there, and then, I'm running out of arm space here, but it's, just applying the principles to health and fitness and helping people get happier and healthier.
What's your kind of model, your typical client sort of stuff? Like, what do you work on, I guess, in that area? Because that's a massive area.
Right, yeah, so health, very, very big bucket. Break it down, I know more physical activity, so I tend to go towards that route. And so when people want to get more fit and active, we start with real basic targets. And as clinicians, as researchers, as the scientist practitioner, we look at the research, and most easily detectable behaviors related to health and fitness are physical activities by way of, step counts. Like, that's the easy thing to do, right? We got Apple Watches, Fitbits, and that is a good metric, I think, to start with. And I start there, and I've been fortunate to have some decent success.
Yeah, so are you helping people figure out how to like self-track and make these decisions, or is it like you're making those decisions for them?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, because you may have somebody that's never tracked their own behavior before, so they have the device, but now they have to report steps to me.
Yeah.
Some folks are, one of my previous clients was a marathon runner, so she uploaded everything into Garmin the whole time, and so she needed me to help figure out if her data were useful and effective and if her program were working. So there's kind of a spectrum, if you will, of like somebody who has data just has never looked at it to they have a ton of data, don't know what to look at. Mm-hmm. And then of course picking out the meaningful targets. Meaningful for somebody over here could be I need to get active to lose some weight. Somebody over here is I want to get active and run a faster, half marathon time.
Yeah. One thing I think is cool out of this work is, first of all, you have some really cool blog posts and like explaining how this stuff, like you put your time and care into there. There's always a little bit of fun kind of jokes or little things in there, a little bit of humor or whatnot kind of glared in, which is always peppered, which is super nice to read. But in that, you come across super cool stats and research of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Anything you're kind of like consuming right now where you're like...
As far as like recent posts or...
for example, like the stats around just how sedentary our culture is.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, I mean, the basics are we sit too much, and oftentimes we have jobs that require us to be sedentary or sitting all day. And so, I mean, the layman's, I think, interpretation is, if you reduce your sitting volume or the time, the duration that you sit throughout the day, so you may be sitting in both work and leisure activities for 14 hours, just try to shave a couple hours off. Mm-hmm. It's going to come with a lot of benefits, when it comes to reducing heart disease, reducing risk for diabetes, reducing risk for various cancers. You have the volume piece, so how much, and then how often, that's the second part. So it's how often are we getting up and moving. We're going to be sitting here and talking for probably about a half hour, 45 minutes probably, depending on editing time. But we just need to get up and move every 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And so like the physiological stuffs, the bad things that occur as soon as you sit for too long because your legs get stiff, all those things start to happen. And you just got to get up and move around and reduce your time and you're good to go. So if you do that, your risk for things go down.
So what are some of the areas, I guess, that folks that are interested in this, what are some of the resources? You have your podcast, which is a really cool, accessible way to learn more about this. But if people are interested in learning more just about health and fitness, do you point them in general ways?
You're right. So I've written a couple posts about the recent physical activity recommendations for kids and adults. There's some things related to the American Diabetes Association will put things out as far as if you have diabetes or if you're pre-diabetes risk, then you need to watch out for your added sugars. So I've just written some posts about that. Just kind of okay, you go to their websites like the ADA, the American Diabetes Association. It's not fun to read. So I do the hard work and distill the information. And so there's some recommendations and things that I've better interpreted that most people can follow. So I have those resources. The podcast, I put in some, other helpful tips on my social media, posting everything, doing videos like this is always, informative. So, I've written now. I just looked on the calendar of when I put out my first blog post, and that was I think it was October 28th, 2015. And right now it's October, 17th, 18th right now. So it's going to be like the 4-year anniversary of my first blog post. So I've done at least one blog post for the past 4 years. So there's a lot in there. Go look at the blog posts.
Yeah. Congrats on that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Consistency is like key.
Right.
This is a good segue maybe. So you were, since you're branching out of the norm of some of the typical roles that maybe a BCBA has, we were talking beforehand, it's not this like everything's turned on and it goes and it's just boom, I'm here. Like it's a slow development. Can you maybe tell us some about that? Like this was not an overnight thing that you just started out, right?
Yeah, I hear about that, and I just read, you might like this. You know Questlove, the drummer for The Roots?
I don't.
He just put out, okay, well, he's the drummer for The Roots. Have you heard of the band The Roots?
Yes, I've heard of The Roots.
His name is Questlove.
Okay.
He's got a book about creativity.
Okay.
And so The Roots, they now are they're the show band for Jimmy Fallon.
Okay.
And he, multiple times throughout his book on creativity and what it's like, they're from Philadelphia. I highly recommend the book. They said like they're the best, 15-year overnight success. It's like we were, on the road in London eating noodles for 10 years until like we made it or things like that. And so it took a long time. So same thing with, a nice, slick, fancy website. Sometimes it takes a while to build. Yeah. And all these posts being consistent. So on that journey, if we look at this behavior analytically, you got to go towards the places that are interesting to you. And that's how it's easy then to become, loosely speaking, more motivated to start creating and doing things. Like you love video content, so you've developed this awesome channel and you're talking to me now. I like fitness. I've always wanted a website, but I didn't really have an end goal. Yeah. But combining the two between ABA and health and fitness, I thought, okay, how does that happen? And so for me, I liked the area, and I kind of slowly built up through my research and making personal decisions too. That was a big thing that played in all of this, is that I was making personal decisions for health and fitness. I didn't have a good healthy lifestyle. I learned about these things and they all kind of combined all at once, and it was good to start building from there.
Yeah, you personally can make your life a little bit better in some sort of way. You get to leverage the research interests, and I think kind of put all this all together.
I think a lot of the folks who speak more about like values and those things and everything, like I know those are important, and this is where I'll kind of halt my competency a little bit of just like, I know they're there, and it sounds like my values and all kind of align together, and once I did that, it made everything a lot easier, and I think that was a big part of it. But also, like, for me personally, I have a history of I like tinkering and trying to figure out and problem solve, and so health and fitness, let's say hypothetically it existed as an industry, I personally may not have been as attracted to it to try to solve and tinker because it was already figured out. And so I think because nobody has done anything, that was more motivation for me to like start developing a niche area. Yeah. And that's just me.
Yeah. And that's an important part, kind of tying back on those values of like knowing what it is that kind of keeps you motivated and keeps you going. So that's cool. So it's been about 4 years roughly, right? Was that blog post like the beginning of the business and whatnot?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it started with blogs, and I thought, okay, I've been writing about it, so now let's start talking about it. I think that's a natural progression. You start to learn how quickly you are fluent or not fluent in the topic once you start, hammering out blogs left and right, and that's something too. Like, I didn't just become fluent at like writing blogs. Like, I'd say the first blogs that I had written, the first year took a lot longer on average than now. I can just crank them out because I was getting more learning trials in as a writer, as a researcher, and then just you write more when you're posting on social media, and then you're writing more. Each blog you get better and better, and
that's how the video process.
Right. Yeah.
What used to take
your videos were garbage the first time you put them out.
They were. They were.
My first writing was garbage too.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll click in and like watch like some older stuff.
Right. So asterisks here. Just read the past year and a half. The first couple of years were no good.
Yeah, it's crazy when you start to plan a skill set. If you're just loosely tracking some of your own data, right? As to, for example, like I used to look at some things that go in with video is just how long is the final product taking me, and you can break that down into like how long does it take me to record this, or ideation, record, organize everything, because I actually watch all the footage back before I figure out like what to start doing with it. So if you record an hour interview, like right there, you're gonna listen to it back before you even start moving around. And so for me, it was kind of like looking at these different processes and be like, let's start figuring out what the industry does to be really efficient in each of these.
Right.
And
I think real quick to add to that, as I was developing a blog, so that's just like writing a blog is one thing in itself. And what you're describing too, which I think would parallel in your video production process, is that you're also learning how to develop the infrastructure at the same time.
Yeah.
So all of that, it's going to take things, so you're building your own repertoire, you're building skills at the same time of carving a whole new niche area industry, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to like be patient with yourself and be okay with like, okay, it's going to take me an additional 5 hours this month to learn all the WordPress plugins, and I had to do that, you know, and we all have to do that. And so it's like you have like the package of like, oh, there's a video or there's a blog, but like then you also have to look at, okay, what is behind getting all that content out to the world, whether it's you know some type of common content like we're talking about, or it's a consulting service delivery line, or a new digital product. So you have to have the knowledge of the content, and you have to figure out how to get it out there. So there's, when you're building and working in new areas, they don't teach you any of this in graduate school. So it's like, go change the world, go save the proverbial world, and like there's a lot of skills that need to be fulfilled on the back end to even start chipping away at.
No, 100%. I think it might have been you. Someone was suggesting the E-Myth to me, the E-Myth book.
Yeah, I've read that. Maybe it was me. Yeah.
I think it was you that suggested that to me. And it was one of those books that I always recommend to folks that are considering kind of branching out. Yeah. I know about the baking.
What did you learn?
You know, it's funny. It was you and somebody else. I don't want to spoil it necessarily for anybody because I think it's a great book. But I just looked at it as like, where's your reinforcement at? And like, what are you trying to build at the end of the day? And like, what are you, and it kind of falls in that value stuff like you're talking about. Just for me, it was, what do you love about what part of the process? And so what I've seen many people fall into, for example, I was just at an event for younger behavior analysts in the field, younger in like their running journey, considering starting a business. And it was like, if you love the delivery model, and like that experience, that delivery model, that is a totally separate field, or in day to day, and like what you're gonna be doing than on the business side, right?
Yeah, I think those decision points and these transitions in careers, like that's where there needs to be more folks talking about it, like we are now. So what happens is, going back to the E-Myth, is like it comes down to, are you working in your business or are you working on your business? And like, for argument's sake of this video, on your business, that's like the CEOs and the private investors, all those things, Amazon, Google, they're all looking, how do we expand? They're not actually doing the work of developing the search engines. So in ABA, it's, if you're an RBT, are you working with the kid yourself, or do you want to get to the point where you're training other RBTs to that and develop the plans for them to do the work? And then there's just different stages too. So that you become an RBT, eventually you're a BCBA, and the myth here is like, you enjoy doing the work yourself, or do you like working on the work?
Exactly.
Developing the plans, and if, and
that's it.
If it doesn't jive, then...
And that alters the different problems that you're going to be running into and experience having to solve at the end of the day. So yeah, I just had to thank you, because it was you and my other business mentor that I have that so it was like, you've got to read this book. And when I hear two people in my life,
the networks have aligned.
I pause life and listen to this. I remember I crushed it out an audiobook for...
it's a very easy read. Easy listen.
No, it's very easy. So cool. Is there anything that you've ran into that you kind of considered a failure, or like a hard point in like chasing this passion?
Yeah, I think for me, just given the context of the timing of doing all this, so I had a background of 5 years of clinical work. You're in a clinic, you're in front of the clients all the time. You're a lot of FaceTime, right? You're doing that. I think the hard thing for me is like maybe I didn't set up my model to give enough time to folks, like because I ended up working online with people, and that was the best that I could do. You know, I got to cut myself some slack for that. But like, so I was a full-time student, trying to be full-time husband, father, all those things. So it's, you know, you come from like seeing your clients working like, you know, one-on-one for a couple hours a day per person to like you only see them for like an hour or two every other week, and it's just like, what do I do in between? How much work is that? How do you set your price point? What's fair? What's valuable? All these things, and doing something new. So I guess maybe the biggest pain point, or I don't know, thing that I had trouble with was thinking about like how much time I could give, you know, and like how much time could I give to maybe automating some type of data collection process, or, you know, hindsight's 2020, of course, of like, you know, if I was a PhD student, maybe I could have found like a bachelor student, but at the same time, it's like, maybe I didn't have enough time to even think about that, so I don't know. I don't really have any regrets. I always think about how I could have maybe done things better or different.
I think that's a good way or like frame to approach those sort of things. Your hindsight's 2020. When I'm thinking about processes and things that I've been building up, one thing I learned is don't take on too much of something new, because if your assumptions are wrong on what you think it's going to take, and you take on too much, that's where you just kind of multiplied your problem.
Well, I think that kind of segues to a nice point of like, you want to go do something new, and you want to try everything, but you always have to be like, you want to say yes to all the opportunities, but eventually you have to start peeling back like, okay, like I like writing, then I eventually got into, you know, enjoying speaking, and then, you know, I like talking about it too, like on podcasts by myself. So these are all different like repertoires. So you have to figure out like, what's gonna be your medium that you like the most. And so if you start, you know, it's like a jack of all trades. Like if you start trying to do 10 things, then you're not going to do one of these very well. So I just, you know, for me personally, my journey, I just focused on writing, and then I added speaking, then I got better at speaking and writing, and they, you know, it's an iterative process. They help each other out, and then you get into speaking, writing, and then working with clients. And so, you know, I didn't do everything all at once. It was a slow progression, of course, based on supply and demand, what people are saying to me, you know, and you know, filling out forms on my website, things like that. So it was you know, constantly, I'm working on this, look at the environment, how am I doing? Okay, good. All right, then just that constant back and forth.
So I've got a question for you. If this one's like a little bit too personal, let me know. I'll just drop it out. But you'd mentioned that, you know, you're doing this on the time, you're doing all this during full-time school, for full-time father, full-time husband. How is it hard to balance those sort of things? Like, I assume these processes always be these dynamic things. Like there's no set process, right? What's that like?
It's hard. It's hard. Sleep, right. You know, so that's the hard thing too. If you are valuing health and fitness, then you want to take care of yourself and not, you know, skimp on sleep and missing out on exercise. So I think the hard thing was not so much, you know, probably balance. I don't think is the right descriptor, but just like understanding, like if you're giving time over here to this activity, that means
you can't.
Somebody else is losing time on the back end. So if my wife could have less time preparing for her job or something like that, and it's only after, you know, through going through different life transitions that you learn that, okay, maybe I need to, you know, take one less client, so then it's not interruptive on a Sunday when we need to spend family time together, or something like that. So it's, you know, I think you try to do your best, but then just learning that your activities, I think that's probably one of the biggest like family impacts. It's like your activities, it's exciting to go do things, but, you know, depending on what your home life is, it's gonna have, like, if you clearly spend an hour with a client, that means that's one less hour cleaning the house.
Whatever it is, spending time. It was one of those things that I try to just reflect weekly if I can. It's not always, depends on what's going on, but I try to just reflect and like think back on my week and be like, what did I compromise? What did I achieve? What did I do? What did I not like? But like, what did I compromise is usually where it comes down to. So something like this, flying out, hanging out with people, really cool, meaningful time, but it's in stark contrast to other values with family, friends, loved ones, things like that. You can't engage those sort of things. So I'm always curious, you know, how people are trying to
Yeah,
So.
I think, I mean, especially for me right now, we're in Indiana. I was just in Florida. I graduated in May. We're recording this in October.
Yeah.
And this significant life transition, moving across the country, new job, new full-time job unrelated to BehaviorFit, right?
Yeah.
And so now I have 4 years of habits, so to speak. I have to figure out, like, which of these do I maintain? Is it going to be blog writing? Yes. You know, is it going to be speaking as often as I did, you know, when I was kind of in my prime of BehaviorFit speaking? It's like, you know, again, this is just that process that's ongoing, and, you know, you figure out, like, all right, what do we have to build? And maybe you scale back and be okay with that, which I think scaling back would come after you know, get into your niche and everything, but I think you have to plan for that, right? Because nobody's just walking up to me on the street saying, "Hey, Nick, well, maybe if you're out there, just come give me the check. Like, hey, here's a $200,000 check. We heard what you did. You know, now come speak at these 4 events for Google." Like that, you know, if that happens on a 5-year contract, I'll gladly accept it. But we have to be, you know, there's reality too, you know. So.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I haven't been able to find all the answers. Kind of seem to correlate around. It's a dynamic, ongoing process. Pay some attention towards it, right?
Right.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
So.
And the biggest demand too, you know, relating to most practitioners in our field, is like the demand of the work of the ABA trained, you know, autism practitioner. Like that's there. All that guesswork, it's there. So any extra time that you take away from that to develop your own niche, like it could be a long process, just like it's been a long process for me. You could have success right away, which probably isn't good because you're not going to learn how to build things the right way, or it could take a long time. And I think we just need more people to buckle in for the ride. And I think we'll be closer to saving the world.
Cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't necessarily ask or bring up?
I think the biggest thing, if there's, you know, like we talked off camera about what's the number, how many BCBAs are there to be?
They're projecting 5 to 6 times a growth rate, so somewhere around 150,000 in the next 5 years, or it's about 36,000, I think, is the time of the recording. Which is unprecedented growth for a professional organization.
Yeah. So conferences are going to be just bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Right, because they're already fairly large with only 30,000.
Yeah.
And if I just make up some random percentages here, it's like if we have 150,000 and 1% of those behavior analysts, and that's just BCBAs, right? Not RBTs. RBTs are going to be like
BCBAs, it's a
like
credential.
$500,000, right?
That's what it's going to be insane,
That if you want to do something new, take 1% of 150,000. What's that, 1,500 or something?
Yeah.
Then you're gonna like have folks that want to do something new. So how do we learn those skills? And regardless of whatever you do, just in my experience of working with others that are interested in health and fitness, it's like if we're working with the principles, just focus on how you can, as quickly as possible, measure some type of behavior. And that's been always my kind of go-to. What you added earlier. So I like the consistency, and I try to call it like the race to the data of something, because then you can start talking to the client about something, whatever it is. I do health and fitness. Other people could do recycling. You could do maintenance on a garbage truck or whatever it is. Like, just figure out as fast as you can how to collect the data, because you don't want 2 to 4 weeks go by and then you're not. That doesn't differentiate you as a behavior analyst doing something new and novel with the principles. Like, I could just be a business consultant, no offense to that generic term of people, but it's like I could come in and say, all right, let's just work on this. Okay, I'll be back next month. Like, that's what I always try to challenge myself. I'm like, what am I doing that's so special that nobody else can do? And help them solve the problem, focus on the behavior. And I think when you have those things, you know, with some mindful ethics, you can't go wrong.
I like that race to data. Like line, that's a good one. It's a race to the data, and that is what separates us. If you're doing it right. Cool.
Because there's plenty of folks, professionals out there that do amazing things. You know, I work on an interdisciplinary team now in IT and, you know, HR, and they're great. They're good at what they do. If I came in as a hired consultant, I would look at, okay, how do we measure what we're doing, and what needs to be, how do we get people there with, you know, rate of responding and reinforcement, right? That's what Abigail talked about this morning. So it's like, be consistent, focus on, you know, basic principles, and I guess with that too, like, don't overthink it. Like, it's just behavior. Like, there's no magical process. Like, this is the work.
Yeah.
You know, so, and then of course follow your passion, all that stuff. So, you know,
Dig.
I think
it's a good place to end, man. Cool. Appreciate it.